it's not a mystery why we fell short of expectations. The bullpen's been a challenge for us all season long. Significant injuries to the three guys we expected to anchor the back end, and then the backfill just wasn't there. So the bullpen's been an Achilles for us all year, and then there were a number of guys in the lineup we projected to have, carrying levels of performance. It didn't happen. I think the greater focus for us is what can we learn from that? What role did we play in that? How we can construct a team that's better next year. So, but there's no doubt it's bitterly disappointing.
All right. Blair and Barker. Ben Ennis filling in for Jeff Blair. Sportsnet 590 The Fan and Sportsnet. That was Mark Shapiro, President and CEO of the Toronto Blue Jays, speaking for the first time since spring training. Barker, it's no surprise. It's no secret as to why the Blue Jays have underachieved. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. Like I think if you're Mark, start listening to this show. Like me and Jeff been having this conversation for 2.5 years about, just the talent and the length of your lineup, and two dudes that you call the core need help. Like, it's no secret. We've seen a big enough sample size and one of the best years that a player's ever had in Vladimir Guerrero Jr. with the people that he had around him. Now, a little bit of that might have something to do with the minor league ballparks, but still. Like, he had help around him, and it was free and easy. And I know they were thinking this thing, and to put pressure on two dudes that, quite frankly, don't want to have the pressure and just want to be a part of the team, I think it's finally nice to start hearing that. And sometimes it's not rocket science. And a lot of teams, organizations try and turn it into rocket science when basically, do we just have enough talent? And I think that's sort of, again, when you listen to Mark talk, it's the underlying part of scouting, development, and just basically looking at a player and deciding a little bit quicker whether that player is good enough to help you going forward. So fingers crossed they figured that out. And Jeff Blair's been saying this about the bullpen forever. Just, it is mind-boggling that when you lose three of your key pieces that you do absolutely nothing to help it. Like, absolutely nothing. So hopefully they build off of that. Hopefully they spend a little bit of money on a closer. They get Jordan Romano back. Chad Green looks like he's turned the corner. Yeah. You got a bunch of 6th and 7th inning guys. Those are not hard to find. It's those 8th and 9th inning guys that you got to pay for. So hopefully for me, they they sign a closer. Maybe they'll get an aircraft carrier, but it is nice to hear, sort of the people that are running the organization who have finally bought into, just basically what they're selling is not working. And hopefully they go out and fix it. And I have been in the camp that I don't think they're far away. A couple of pieces here and there with what they already got and sort of get that shortstop back on track and make him feel like he's a part of the organization again. I think they'll be right back in there.
Well, that's what they're going to try and do in 2025, is indicated by every public comment. Again, the first time we've heard from Mark Shapiro, though, since spring training, we've heard from the general manager, Ross Atkins, a couple of times before the deadline, after the deadline. Kind of a different tone from Ross, though, Kevin. I mean, Ross apologized directly
on this show
to the fans, like multiple times. He took a very contrite approach. Not the sense I got from Mark. He was more matter of fact. He was talking about, hey, the reason or the way to get fans back on board with what we're building here is just bringing wins back into the building, which makes sense. I mean, you mentioned the bullpen, so Jordan Romano's still out. I mean, his future, who knows, with the injury he's sustained. Jimmy Garcia was injured before he was traded away in a couple appearances before they traded him away. Chad Green was on the IL. Eric Swanson, of course, started the season injured with Jordan Romano, reemerged at the same time, and then lack of performance sent down to AAA. Yeah. The offense wasn't so good a season ago, 89 wins, but we were told it was a blip, right? And it carried over into this year, and it's longer than a blip. Starting pitching has regressed slightly, but I don't
older.
Yeah, I don't know if you would put that at the tippy top of the list. Like if you talk about the reasons why the Blue Jays are where they are, playing as far as wins and losses are concerned, meaningless baseball in August, what's the number one reason?
They don't have enough talent on the guys that play every day. That's the one thing for me that is glaring, right, is the athleticism on an everyday basis to where, I mean, just look at yesterday, we were poking fun at this when, the starting pitcher for the Orioles didn't you get to pitch, and then they bring in a guy that, really they didn't know anything about, and it was 5 scoreless. And, that's basically the way it is, right? It's everybody looking around going, well, game plan for this, and the Khakis told us this and that and the other, and now we have to go up and just basically use our talent to get through and give us a chance to win a baseball game, and that's the part of it, right? I think is what, Mr. Shapiro is talking about, is that part of it, where it's just – I've said this. When John's writing out the lineup, it's just you look at the lineup and go, we have more talent than this dude today. Sooner or later, we're going to get this done.
Yeah.
And it's rare that he's able to write out the lineup. So, again, hopefully, you get the key pieces back and you add some pieces that can help the shortstop and the first baseman, right? So, it sounds like they're going to have basically the same amount of money to do it. And they got it looks like they had a model.
Yeah.
Whatever that model was, didn't seem to be working.
Yeah, you need to throw that model out.
Yeah. So now you adapt, you adjust, you overcome, you use a little common sense, and hopefully this sort of turns the way you want it to turn. And I just think the fixes are obvious. You don't got to overthink this. Like, basically who Alejandro Kirk is. When Bo is healthy and happy, you know what he is. If you get Vladdy help, sort of with this Vladdy, what he is. You sort of know what Springer is. If Dalton Varsho ever became a hitter, man alive, could you just picture what that would be? You sort of know now what you need, right? Right? You might need a left fielder. You might need a third baseman. Hopefully one of those two could play and hit in the middle of the order and sort of protect the dudes that are up front in front of them. So I think they're obvious answers here. Now it's just going out and fixing it.
Yeah, who's going to fix it, though? Because obviously Mark Shapiro's at the tippy top of the pyramid, and we mentioned that we've heard from Ross Atkins already a couple of times this season. Different tone from Ross. Of course, one of the main questions asked today, and again, Mark Shapiro's first media availability since spring training, was the job status of his general manager. Here is Mark Shapiro talking about Ross Atkins' future.
I very rarely am unequivocal about anything. Commenting on job status during a season throughout my entire career when I've been asked about those things is not something I have or will ever do. That being said, contextually, I'm a huge believer in stability and continuity, and that those are competitive advantages in professional sports, that reacting and change don't necessarily mean improvement. So we need to be better. We have to be better. I think stability and continuity and making adjustments are where I'm focused right now.
All right. Does that sound like a vote of confidence?
Yeah, that sounds like he didn't answer it, but he did. Basically, it sounds to me like he's running it back. Like Ross Atkins will be the GM next year. You'll have the same manager. The adjustments maybe offensively, the coaching staff. Like, for me, there's just too many. Like, I mean, how many times you just got to, have
too many coaches?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Man alive. Well, they got 4 hitting coaches. Like, they're one of the worst hitting teams in baseball. Like, I mean, there's obviously, and just going to a different coach once a month, it's a lot. Like, it's, there's some just, I think that's sort of what he's talking about, is you just need that, that one deciding voice in a room. And, did you walk away from that, listening to that, thinking that, man, they're going to shake that up and they're going to be a different voice, and there's going to be a different person making up their mind, whether Vladdy's being signed or, I'm sure that's a higher up other than Ross would be making that decisions, but all these other things of the free agent that you might come in that would be an aircraft carrier, who they're going to trade for to get that catcher that will help Kirky, who's playing third, who will play left, like, do you like Horowitz playing second? That sounds to me like, he didn't answer it.
No. But
he did answer it.
Well, multiple times throughout the course of his about 20-minute media availability, he talked about conversations he's going to have after the season with his general manager, Ross Atkins. So, you can take that. You can also take the part of the clip we just played talking about stability, which is like, that's not untrue, right?
Yeah.
You look at some of the model franchises across all major North American pro sports, and the Pittsburgh Steelers having 3 head coaches in their entire tenure. There is something to that, but there's also something to this going on now a decade where not only, you made the playoffs 3 times. There's not a playoff victory among them. Mm-hmm. There's no division titles. and the farm system's at a point where, the prospects you acquired for expiring assets are now at the tippy top of your prospect ranking list. At what point does, stability's good, but at a certain point that does run out of steam? Are we at that point now?
Well, I think you got to remember too, Mark's contract is up at the end of next season, right?
Yeah.
So he's got one more year. That would be a tough thing, right? To get rid of your GM, get rid of basically all your coaching staff with you having 1 year left. I have no idea what his future's like. We'll ask Shi when he comes on. One of us will, about the future of Mark Shapiro, and will they give him an extension? I would think that would be sort of first and foremost if you're thinking about making changes when it comes to your GM. And, I mean, if you're Mark, that would sort of be where you'd start, right? If I'm going to do this, give me some security to where it's, I got a little time here to fill in the blanks with those kind of things. If not, it's that stuff that he talked about at the end of his little conversation there that we played was, it's just the adjustments that they do need to make. I don't care who the GM is. I'm in that camp. I'm happy that it sounded like a very smart man understands now that what they were trying to do the last couple of years is just not working. And now you need to sort of self-correct a little bit. Take a step back, take a deep breath, and you can really hone in on what you need to do to take the team to the next level. It sounded to me like now that they realize that. And I'm in that camp. I don't care who the GM is. I mean, I'm sure there'll be a lot of people that are very excited. You do talk radio. You know how it is. They're going to be fired up. I'm not. I just, as long as they go out and address the needs, does it matter?
No, it doesn't matter who it is, and it doesn't matter what they say. And that's part of the availability from Mark Shapiro today that I really did appreciate. That. I mean, you can put whatever flowery words you want around it. It comes down to more wins. This team needs more wins, and that's what's going to satiate the fan base. It's not putting on a good face in one of these media availabilities, apologizing to them. Doesn't matter if you apologize all day long and you lose 90 games again next season. You're gone.
Urgency to fix the product that the fans are coming to watch every single day. They don't see Ross every single day.
No.
They don't see Mark every single day. They don't see who's working in the front office, the khakis. They don't see them every day, but they do see the product that they want to pay for to come and watch their favorite player play, and hopefully are starting to win some baseball games. So I just like the way it ended, right? He answered the question the best way I think he thought he knew how to answer it.
Yeah.
And then he said, we need to adjust, adapt, overcome, realize what our needs are, and go out and address them. And bullpen and an aircraft carrier, that's right there at that top of the list.
Vlad's doing a pretty good aircraft carrier impression right now. 18-game hitting streak. Of course, Bo Bichette's still on the injured list. Maybe a return before the end of the season. But that's the other major question headed into this offseason, the status of the GM, and also the status of a couple of franchise players that are headed into their final years of team control. Here is Mark Shapiro on the pending free agent status after next season of Bo Bichette and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and whether extensions are forthcoming this offseason.
With next year being the last year, Vlad, and the whole half of the club prior to becoming free agents, is it your intent to find a way to keep one of them or both of them in Toronto longer term?
Yeah, I'm not going to comment on those guys specifically, but it's certainly easier to build a sustainable championship team with talent like that in place for extended periods of time.
Okay. All right, put your analysis hat on here, like body language doctor hat on. What did you glean from that?
I've been in the camp for a little while that if they wanted to sign Vladdy, they'd have done it already. So I've been in that camp, and I'm not changing my mind there.
There was a dollar figure that could have gotten it done?
I think with one side. I think with the others. I think the two parties were too far apart. And, again, if you really like somebody, you're signing them. You want them here long term. You want them here as long as you're going to be here, which Vladdy will be if, Mr. Shapiro chooses, or the front office, the ownership chooses not to bring him back, then it will sort of work out to where those two are here the same time he's here. I started the conversation and ended the conversation having no idea what their feelings about Vladimir Guerrero Jr. I have no idea. Did you? You walked away from that. I understand what he was saying. Not whether they're going to
sign him.
Yeah, I understand what he's saying. It absolutely, talent don't grow on trees.
Yeah.
And they need a bunch of that. I mean, listen to the Dodgers front office talk. All they talk about is they just want to ooze their organization with talent. If you got talent, I can teach you how to do other things. If you don't have talent, I can't polish that. I just have, again, do you have an answer? I don't. So,
I mean, he did indicate that it's a lot easier to have a sustainable winner when you have two
obvious.
very good players.
He's
locked
very
up
good
long
at that.
term.
He's very good at that.
He didn't throw the red meat to the fans, though. All the fans want to hear is we're going to do our darndest to keep those guys under contract long term for a decade plus. He didn't say that.
But he did not.
Okay, so does that indicate to you that that is not their number one priority? You could have said that as well. It's our number one priority this offseason. I mean, what that does do, though, I mean, it does put you in a box if you don't get it done.
Yeah, well, he's a very smart man. I've known Mark for a long time. I've known his father for a long time. They are a very, very, very smart family. He is not going to back himself in a corner. You know, that is President 101.
Yeah.
Again, I'm in the camp. If they loved him as much as, we love him, and this, that they don't, guys like that don't grow on trees.
Have your feelings about the player not evolved, though, over time? I mean, we had the 2021 season. 2022, in retrospect, was a lot better than I think I initially gave it credit
25
for.
and 95 don't grow on trees either.
Yeah. Okay.
Now he had 31 year or two.
I mean, last year was a significant step backwards, and who knows whether health had an impact on the final accounting statistics. But this is as close to the 2021 version of Vladimir Guerrero Jr. as we've seen. I mean, just like consistently. Yeah. He might be better than he was in 2021.
I don't know about you, but I think it's a process. Like if ownership is still willing to spend money, it makes no sense to sign Vladdy and do nothing else.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen that.
Yeah.
We've seen that try and play out. We've seen the front office throw it all off on the core. The core is two people. That's the shortstop and the first baseman. We've seen how that's went. Right now, the challenge of them two doing it by themselves is not very good. So I think it's still a process. If you sign Vladdy, you still got to be able to go out and get you an aircraft carrier. Somebody that's going to be lumped in there with the other two and maybe the occasional George Springer who can do some things. Like, if not, what's the point? Really?
Yeah.
Like, so I'm still going to stick in that camp. I would be very surprised if they give him a giant deal.
We'll see. I mean, 2025 seems like a very important year for a number of different reasons. A couple of guys contractually, obviously, a couple of players contractually, and some front office people also contractually. We'll come back around to commenting on the Mark Shapiro media availability after 5 o'clock when we talk to Shi Davidi. Blue Jays look like their best versions of themselves in that game yesterday against the Baltimore Orioles. 5-2 win on the strength of 7+ innings from Chris Bassett. He was real good. 5 runs, 6th inning as well. Some clutch hitting. Alejandro Kirk with a 3-run homer. His first homer since mid-June.
Yeah, welcome to the season.
Kevin, this is a guy that was an all-star and somebody you were pleased as punch to put in there as a DH not that long ago. All of a sudden, obviously the Blue Jays are going to have to backfill a secondary catcher position in 2025. But that was the way this Blue Jays team was supposed to look. It's just one game, but great defense all the way around. Great defense. Starting pitching, couple of relievers, and
have a big inning.
Yeah, Genesis Cabrera walks in the first run, and you think, here it goes.
Yep.
But he buckles down, a couple of strikeouts and a ground out, and all of a sudden, the Blue Jays have a victory. I mean, you need to pile a bunch of those together to indicate that you're capable going into 2025, but that's about as prototypical a win as you can have.
Absolutely. I think it's the blueprint, and you could close your eyes as a Jays fan and see why this would not be a hard fix and have an opportunity at least because of the 3 wild card spots to make a run at this thing, right? It's about getting in. I mean, if the Diamondbacks hadn't told us that, then we're not watching baseball. Like, we're smart fans. We understand that that's what it's about. Chris was really good last night, right? The pace was really good. Throwing strike one. If I'm a hitter, what do I want to do? I want to try and eliminate multiple pitches from him, right? But when he is 18 to 25 and getting ahead, throwing strike one, that now means it's sort of an open book, and I can't eliminate a couple of his pitches, right? And in the sinker, he gets called strikes, he gets swings, he gets whiffs on that thing. That allows him to, throw the sinker arm side, throw the cutter glove side. He can go to quadrants, right? Up and down arm side with different movements when he's getting called strikes. I mean, that is a big deal. Now, instead of me being on the offense, I'm on the defense, and I can't eliminate 4 or 5 of those pitches. Now it allows him to, use the change and the split to sort of tunnel off each other and Now he can throw the plethora. I mean, he was mentioning the slider's been the best thing he's thrown all year.
He threw it 7 times. It's it's his second fewest pitches he's thrown this season with that pitch. The four-seamer he's used the only pitch he's used less than the slider this season.
Those are the guess pitches, right? It's the sweeper, it's the slider, it's the split finger, it's the four-seamer. Those are the 4 that you sort of have to guess with if you're a hitter, right? It's the other 3 that I think he's really honing in on. But when the sinker's really good and he's throwing strike 1 and his pace is the way it was, give Kirky credit, right? It was when you got in breaking ball counts and you see Kirky sort of pointing out there, like that'll tell you he's not thinking about his offense. Like he's figured something out mechanically that now he's in a frisky little place. Like it's, you notice how good these dudes play defense when they're raking. Yeah, Ernie Clement, when's the last time you talked about him not playing good defense third and shortstop?
Yeah, that's a good point.
He's raking, buddy.
Yeah.
I mean, it goes hand in hand. I used to try and do this for a living. Like you are a big leaguer because you are a hitter first. It ain't the other way around. I know they used to say defensive specialist. Okay. Yeah, right. It is always and will always be for me offensive first. So I just think it goes hand in hand, right? And again, this will give you, if you're a Jays fan, a little bit of life to close your eyes and you see the Loperfitos diving for the ball in left field, which
Dalton
was
Varsho, another catch. Is that even in the top 5 of catches he's made this season?
Probably not. I mean, that's it's almost looking like routine that he leaves his feet and catches balls, and if he doesn't catch it, you're like, you kidding me? Dude, what's wrong? You sick? I mean, catch the ball, but he always catches them. It's just that, again, I think too, if you listen to Mark, it's guys like Dalton Varsho. That if they could just sort of, whatever that coaching staff, the 1,500 of them, that could figure out something that would trigger Dalton to be a better offensive player. How do you get him hitting fastballs better? Because of the way he plays defense. It's just like, it's crazy. So I just think last night, because of the way they handled, you could argue, one of the top couple best teams in the American League.
Yeah.
That this is sort of going forward, if you're the front office. You add here, you add this big here. You have a guy in the 9th inning that's sort of close to a no-brainer. You go out and sprinkle in some 8th inning guys. Maybe that's Chad Green. Maybe that's Jordan Romano. Like, you could see how this could play out. So just add some more athletes to your lineup and bing, bang, boom, cooking with gravy.
Yeah, a couple more games in this series, and then you got a couple of non-playoff teams coming up for the Blue Jays. A's, Angels, Cubs, Reds. Angels before August 26th. You go to Fenway for a series against the Red Sox. Before we take a break, I got to ask you about the 7th inning. 2 outs.
Yep.
Craig Kimbrell on the mound. He doesn't throw 97 anymore, but I'm sure 92 in the back also doesn't feel very good.
Doesn't feel good.
Nobody on. 2 out. He plunks Vlad.
It's on purpose.
I think I know what John Schneider thinks.
On purpose.
I mean, if it was on purpose, you would think it's as a result of the Jordan Westbrook broken hand from the series in Baltimore, Yerry Rodriguez, also James McCann, of course, with the broken nose. Like, I don't think either of those were intentional, but maybe the combination of the two, especially the Westberg one, where that's like a season-ending injury for him. Okay, so you already said you think it's intentional. Is it deserved?
I mean, I guess it's.
Again, I guess is that within the confines of acceptable conduct in Major League Baseball to plunk one of the hottest hitters in all of baseball right in the middle of the bat?
Okay, Adley Rutschman comes up in the 9th inning with 2 outs.
Well, that's another thing. Is it over?
It wouldn't have been for me. No, you hit my hottest, best player on purpose, and everybody in the park and in baseball knew you did it on purpose because of who did it. Kimbrell's an old school guy.
Yeah.
You roll your eyes at old school, but you knock out 2 of my dudes, break a finger and break a nose.
It's 2 out, nobody
I'm squaring
on first
you
pitch.
up.
Yeah.
The first chance I get.
Yeah.
It wasn't Horowitz. It was Vladimir Guerrero Jr. So absolutely. Is it over? I don't know. I think it depends on who's on the mound and how they're feeling that day. And, would you want Chris Bassett to do it in the 8th inning with Adley leading off? No. Because Chris is sort of at the end, right? You can tell he's running on fumes. Then that 8th inning sort of happened, and you're kind of glad he didn't do it. You do it to us, we're going to do it to you. The Orioles are trying to do one thing in the American League East. They're not only trying to out-stuff and out-athlete you, they're trying to be bullies on the block.
Yeah.
That's why they bring in the Kimbrells, other than him being good and the bright lights and You know, I know he's had some bumps in the road, but that's why they're bringing these dudes in here. And occasionally you're going to need a guy just to go, you did it to us. You're getting it.
Well, I mean, the Orioles would tell you that it's now over.
They're not going to tell you.
No, I mean, if you ask them
you watched enough baseball,
Yeah.
you know he did it on purpose.
there's really no doubt in my
There's
mind.
no question.
First pitch, 2 out, nobody on.
He
like
missed his spot by 8 feet.
Oh, it was, if you're going to hit a guy, that's exactly where you hit him.
There you go.
Right in the numbers.
That's it.
And we'll see. You know, maybe Zach Pop at the end of a game that's perhaps decided in a similar situation tonight.
Zach Pop's trying to make a team. I'm not sure that's the guy.
That's not the guy?
I don't know. This is again, right? It's got to be the right person. It's got to be the right guy up. I mean, I'd like that catcher who's pushing the button and where he's setting up, and basically that middle finger button that you push when you want to put somebody on the ground.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Oh, that's the button he was pushing. So you want to push it? It hurts, don't it?
Yeah.
That's.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, look, the Orioles are the Orioles because right now they're the Orioles, and 2015, I used to talk to managers who didn't want to throw left-handed pitching against that gauntlet of right-handed just thumpers that would just annihilate you and embarrass you.
Yeah.
That's what the Orioles are trying to do.
Yeah.
They got to be a little at this American League. This ain't the Central. This ain't even the West. This is the East.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to be the big boy on campus. Because the first two weren't on purpose. That's just two dudes don't know how to pitch.
100%.
It's 100 degrees outside. Guy obviously never
Gary
been
Rodriguez
pitching that.
and
that dude does. That other guy's not even a big leaguer. So those obviously are not on purpose. But the Orioles didn't seem to care.
No, they didn't.
So,
and they dropped a half game out of first place with that loss to the Blue Jays.
What you get.
Yesterday, Yankees doubleheader after they make up for their rain out yesterday against the Angels. We'll get back to Blue Jays and Orioles later on in the program. We'll talk to Shi Davidi after 5 o'clock. But coming up next, we'll talk to Chris Rose, host of Baseball Today, and the Chris Rose rotation as Blair and Barker continues. I'm Ben Ennis, filling in for Jeff Blair. Sportsnet 590, The Fan, and Sportsnet. Blair and Barker, Ben Ennis filling in for Jeff Blair. Blue Jays looking to secure themselves a series victory against the Baltimore Orioles today down at Rogers Center after taking the first game of the series 5-2 yesterday. We just heard from Blue Jays president and CEO Mark Shapiro, did a media availability earlier on today at Rogers Center. Let's talk to Chris Rose, host of Baseball Today and the Chris Rose rotation. How's it going, Chris?
It's going. How are you?
Doing very well. So obviously one of the major questions asked of Mark Shapiro earlier today was, do you intend to sign Vladimir Guerrero Jr. to an extension this offseason, considering he has one more year of team control? And he kind of equivocated. I mean, what would it cost in your conversations, do you think, to lock Vladimir Guerrero Jr. up long term?
Well, probably at this point, the number's got to start with a 2. That's what I would think, right?
At least. I mean,
so, you start there. I think that the Blue Jays have screwed this up. They had a chance to, in my opinion, really kind of refurbish their farm system and group of young players at a massive seller's deadline. Now, I'm not so sure people would have paid the price, and so maybe they tried. I don't know. You're never going to find out the truth, and they don't need to tell you the truth. They're in front office. But, they traded Kikuchi. That was an easy one. It sounds like they did pretty well in that deal, so I hope that works out from Toronto's standpoint. But what I would have done with Vlad was I would have either traded him or I would have signed him right now. I mean, he's going to have 1 year left. Why would he sign a deal right now if he's that close to free agency?
Yeah, that's a fair point. I think it's a lot of different things, right? It's the president's deals up end of next year, the GM's deals up 2 years from now. Vladdy and Bo are, at the end of their thing, end of next year. It seems like they're trying to run it back next year. I'm with you about if you're trying to basically halfway blow it up and, Vladdy, this hot Vladdy, I'm sure if you opened up the market, there'd be a lot of people, right? I mean, you can name all the big teams that have farm systems that could do that. I just think that'd be a tough sell to whoever is here. The ticket sales that you want to get. Like if Vladdy Chris, if Vladdy's not here, how would you watch the Blue Jays?
Well, it depends. If they're a good team, then what's it matter? I mean, are you going to go see are you going to go see a 72-win team with Vladdy? I mean, I wouldn't. I think he's a great player. He's a lot of fun. I think he's, done a hell of a job over the last 6 weeks. But that's the goal isn't to just sell tickets for one guy. The goal is to build a freaking really good team. And I got okey-doked with them because I had them going to the World Series this year. So I was dead wrong. But it hasn't worked out. I don't get it. I don't understand it. I think it's one of the great mysteries in the sport, why it's gone sideways here. And so the question is, how do you fix it? And you could do what Boston did, right, with Mookie Betts and say, screw it, we're not going to pay him. So we'll trade him headed in the last year of his deal and hope that one of the 3 prospects you end up getting turns into something really good. At this point, the best player they've got is Connor Wong, and he's a good catcher. There's no question. He's not Mookie Betts, but he's a good player. So the Blue Jays, in my opinion, have kind of screwed this up a little bit, and I think they're going to end up paying for it one way or another.
You talk to a lot of players. You think this is going to make it tougher just the way the situation has went about and what they haven't done and the good players that they haven't brought in here to help out the core, which is the shortstop and the first baseman. And you mentioned how they didn't handle the trade deadline. You'd like to see that different. If I'm a free agent, does that deter me from coming here? I understand it's all about the money, but it's like that if you had to choose between this team, which is the Jays, and another team who give you somewhat the same kind of money. Do you think what's taken place has deterred that? Any people that you've talked to have told you that?
No, I don't. I don't think that that's a big deal. I mean, Toronto's a great city. They've got great fan support. Like I said, it just didn't work with this group of guys. I mean, nobody's like, oh, yeah, I could see the Blue Jays just not doing well this year. There weren't a lot of people in that boat. It just has not worked out. So I don't think that's going to affect free agency or team building or anything like that. I don't see that at all.
Yeah. No, I mean, Mark Shapiro said it was the biggest disconnect between expectations and reality that he's ever experienced in his career in baseball. I mean, you mentioned the Mookie Betts example when it comes to the Red Sox. There's also the Rafael Devers example, right? He was a guy that was headed into his final year of team control and did sign the extension. The positional thing is interesting with Vlad, right? Because we've never seen a $300 million second baseman. There's also Pete Alonso out there. There's also Juan Soto, who's not a first baseman. I mean, how locked down do you think the Blue Jays should be in their thinking when it comes to first base? Like Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is in his mid-20s, right? But he does play first base. The average OPS of a first baseman also in 2024 is not 800 anymore. I think it's like something like 720. I mean,
yeah.
Would you pay Vlad $300 million if he's a first baseman? Or does the positional thing just make that number? I mean, you mentioned 200. I mean, I think he's blowing through 200 the way he's playing right now. I mean, he might be thinking about 300.
Sure, you can think about 300, but you need somebody to offer it to you. Like the $300 million ball players are going to be at the end of this offseason, because I'm going to throw Juan Soto in there, are going to be Shohei, Aaron Judge, Mike Trout, Corey Seager, Bryce Harper. I don't hear a first. Bryce Harper was an outfielder when he signed it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but he was an outfielder when he signed it. So, I don't hear a true first base. Pete Alonso's not going to come anywhere close to that. So there's not a lot of guys that, to me, it feels like a mid-twos contract, and that's okay. But I would take that for a guy if I feel like, Vlad. If this is the Vlad we're seeing as opposed to the last 2 years, which has not been a $250 million player.
Chris, I know Chris Bassett is a co-host on your show, the Chris Rose Rotation.
Yep.
He had one of his best starts last night.
Yep.
Has he talked about his season, how he's felt like it's went, how big of a challenge, or, it's just all systems go and it's just how a normal season goes in a rotation of a team that's had expectations that the Blue Jays have had.
Yeah, well, I'm actually supposed to have him on soon. I might even try for him next week. It's just sometimes our schedules don't line up. So it's been a little bit of a while since I've talked to him. And the thing I love about Bassett is that he doesn't hide it. Like, you can see where his headspace is. And so I think it's been a solid year for him. There's been some really good moments, and there's been some very, very low moments for him. But really, I mean, guys, let's be honest. It's been that offense that has been the problem. And, you talked about building around Vlad and Bo Bichette. I think they got to get Bo back on track. It's been more than a year since he's been a good Major League ball player. It has been. I know he's banged up now, but his last 160 games played or something have not been good. He's been an average shortstop. And so he needs to find his way back. I know he signed kind of that mini extension, if you will, to take him through up until free agency, but he's got to get it.
Yeah. And at a certain point in your career, and I'm not saying this is it, like, you are injury prone. I mean, that was part of the reason for the fall off last year. He was on pace to be the American League hit leader again in 2023 before he got injured, and then obviously the injury derailing him this year. Like, how many seasons in a row do you need before you're a guy that gets that label thrown on you?
I think you're going to get it thrown on you. Interestingly, I talked to Royce Lewis about this at the beginning of the year, right at the end of spring training. And he said, it's not fair to put that label on me. He's like, I ran 28 miles an hour into a wall and I blew out my knee. Like, does that make me injury prone, or is that just an injury? Now, he has been injury prone this year, right? I mean, he's been amazing when he's been on the diamond, but they can't keep him on there. Like, he's been to the injured list 2 or 3 times. So people are going to label him as injury prone, and he's going to have to deal with that. With Bo, it's probably getting in similar territory, but it's even worse for him because at least when Royce Lewis is on the field right now, he is extremely productive. OPS over 900. It feels like every other game he's hitting a home run. We have not seen that out of Bo. So he's kind of dealing with it. I think the least of his concerns are people saying that he's injury prone. I think they want to see if he's all-star Bo or just average Bo.
Chris, I watched the Mariners play. I watched the Orioles play. I watched the Astros play. I watched the Yankees play. And then I see the Guardians play. Sometimes I try and talk myself out of saying that the Guardians are the best team in the American League. And I have no idea why I'm trying to talk myself out of that, because they are fun to watch, middle of the order. They play good defense. They have baseball IQ. They have the best bullpen in baseball. They are, in your mind, and should be in a lot of baseball minds, the best team in the American League, no?
No, they're not the best team in the American League. No, I'm hopeful they'll be the best team in their division, but really? I'm not confident.
Wow.
Yeah, they have listen, we watch every game in this household. I'm fortunate enough to have my 2 adultish sons that are 23 and 18 watch with me every game. And we had 67 wins either early this week or late last week, whatever it was. And we were like, how do we have that many wins? Like, we can't figure it out. We've hit way more homers than we did all of last year already with 2 months to go, which has helped. But, the lack of innings they get from their starters and the amount of stress they put on their bullpen, it's unreal. The Diamondbacks this week on Monday night came back against our bullpen twice, and I can't remember that happening earlier this year. Just doesn't happen. You might get one guy once a week, but you're not getting 2 guys in a game, and somehow they've survived that. And if they're able to dodge and weave and make it to the playoffs, because when you're Clevelanders, you're 90% scar tissue when it comes to the sports world. So I'm hopeful that it will all work out. But it'll be a fun-filled last 7 weeks, I can tell you that.
Yeah.
You know how I know they're not the best team in the American League? is they only went 5-5 through 10 games against the White Sox in their own division. So they have 3 more games. Blue Jays, the Blue Jays, who are going to lose 90-plus games, went 5-1 against the White Sox, who finally won a game. So the losing streak ends at 21, Chris. It was ridiculous, the amount of they also have a 14-game losing streak this season. The 62 Mets have the all-time loss record, 120. It feels like the White Sox are going to cruise past that. I know nobody expected the White Sox to be any good this season, but if I had told you this was going to happen to the White Sox this season, would you have believed me?
No, well, it's the rapid deterioration of the entire franchise, in my opinion, that is most mind-boggling. I did a little thing for Baseball Today, and I went back and looked at the standings August 7th, 2022, so 2 years ago. They were 2 games out of the division lead. They woke up today 41 games out of the division lead. That's almost like they forgot to set their alarm and play games. I don't know how that happens, but it has. This year they haven't been trying, but they were trying. They had a bunch of really good players on their team last year, but they stink. They're horrible, and I don't think they know which direction they're going. And probably the worst part of this entire story is that as bad as they are, the highest they can pick in next year's draft is 11th.
It's crazy.
11th.
It's a good rule. I like that rule. Why should you be rewarded for this?
Yeah, I guess I'm with you. Don't tell that to the Southsiders. Don't tell that to any of your White Sox friends.
Any surprises in the National League? I tried to sell you on the Guardians. That didn't seem to work. You're still, I'm assuming, in the Orioles-Yankees camp. How about the Padres, Diamondbacks? Maybe the Padres has found it. They could be the Diamondbacks in 2024 where you just get in. You got mojo. You got momentum. You got it. Whatever it is, who you buying in the National League right now today?
Oh, I think the Diamondbacks are a lock to make the playoffs because I think, first of all, they had a really good trade deadline. They kind of got 2 under-the-radar relievers with A.J. Puck, that nasty left-hander. They got him from the Marlins. And then they picked up Dylan Floro, who's been a really good right-hander this year. They needed help in that pen, and they are getting help in their rotation from guys that they either haven't had at all or barely had this season. Eduardo Rodriguez is starting right now, game 2 for them. He's making his team debut. And then Merrill Kelly is very close to following him. And you have to remember how good he was down the stretch last year and in the playoffs. So you throw all of those starting rotation guys, like Fott has really developed, Zach Gallen, Merrill Kelly, Erod, and then the bullpen. And, I know that they're going to need Christian Walker back, and their catcher was just lost.
Yeah, Gabriel
with
Moreno.
A groin injury. Moreno. So, yeah, your old guy. So that's a problem. But if they can, kind of wade through those troubled waters, I think they're a lock. I'll tell you who I'm most worried about, the Atlanta Braves.
Yeah.
And I think they're probably the second biggest what the hell has happened. I know that they've lost their best position player and their best pitcher, arguably, but they still have Chris Sale and Max Fried most of the time, and Charlie Morton and Matt Olson and Austin Riley and a good catching situation and Ozzie Albies. And they do have guys, but their offense stinks this year. And the back end of their rotation is just they keep trying different guys, and sometimes it works, and most of the time it doesn't. They could be in trouble.
Yeah, they could.
Yep.
Chris, appreciate the time. Thanks for this.
Great stuff.
Always, guys. Take care. Hang in there. Finish the season strong. And hopefully when the Guardians win it all, you can call me back and say, I don't know what you were worried about on August 7th.
Fingers crossed. I hope it happens. Padres, Guardians, World Series. Take it.
See you, Chris.
Okay. I'll be watching. I don't know who else will be, but I'll be watching.
Yeah, not as sexy as
You're
the
funny.
Yankees.
See ya.
See you, Chris. Chris Rose, host of Baseball Today at the Chris Rose Rotation. Yeah, I feel like Yankees, Dodgers might have more sex appeal than yeah.
You've watched the
Padres,
Yankees play. They a World Series team?
No, they're not. Also a takeaway from this Orioles series, right? They lose Grayson Rodriguez. Who knows? He's having imaging done on whatever kept him out of yesterday's start.
Yeah.
But
He had what Chad Green had, I think, right?
Okay, tonight is their big acquisition at the deadline. Trevor Rogers. That's
That'd
it.
Been great.
You know, I mean, he made one start and he gave up 5 earned runs in 4+ innings.
Yeah.
I look at that rotation and the starting pitchers that they're going to run out there in a playoff series, not to mention the back end of the bullpen that could have used some help as well. I mean, sure, it's a prolonged period of contention that the Orioles hope to have, but who knows how long this is going to last.
Yeah, I think they're thinking as an organization, why back up the truck and get rid of all the major prospects that we have to try and sort of push all
Jackson
our chips.
Holiday looks pretty good.
Yeah, he looks like he's
figured it out.
Well, I mean, the expectations, I think, second time around is they're there. It's just not as glaring, and the spotlight's not always on him. Again, it's you want him to kind of be lost, put him at the bottom of the order. Just run him out there every day. I think that's sort of what they've learned, right? Is just don't try and match him up, or if the dude can play, the dude can play. Like, write his name in the lineup, hopefully at the bottom of the lineup, take a little pressure off of it.
Lefty, though, yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, that's because that lefty, two lefties, the Blue Jays got pretty tough.
Yeah.
Little and Cabrera. I mean, that's not the easiest two gets. Cabrera tries to embarrass you. Yeah. I mean, I know he's effectively wild some of the times, but, it's not the easiest get. I think Brandon Hyde's going to do that, right? You want to take a little pressure. The dude's 20. I think, can you drink in Canada at 20?
You can, but only in Canada, not in Baltimore.
So there you go. Like, he can't drink a beer on the bus. I mean, that's so you should pinch hit for him against the lefty late in the game.
Yeah,
so that's what you're supposed to do. So yeah, look, I think the future looks so bright for them. And again, as well, the playoffs a lot's luck, right? You got to get the right two guys hot in your rotation. Yeah. You got to have 2 or 3 guys in your bullpen are all firing on the same cylinder. Yeah. You got to have no-brainers, right? I get it to the 6th inning, I got this guy. The 7th inning, this guy. I got to have a no-brainer in the 9th inning, which they don't have, which might be their sort of kryptonite. And, Adley Rutschman's sort of, it's that. You got to back-to-back years. Baseball's impossible. That's why when we talk about Vladdy having to have these 40 home run seasons, and, man, it's tough. It's hard to do. So
it's incredible.
They got a good team. The future's bright there. I mean, I wouldn't feel too sorry for them if they don't make the World Series.
Me neither.
No, they're going to be there a lot.
You know what else is tough? Baseball trivia. We're giving you the chance to win Blue Jays tickets all season long here on Blair and Barker. All you have to do is text the correct answer to our daily baseball trivia question to 590-590. Standard message and data rates may apply. Now, our last question was this outfielder bookended his career as a Blue Jay, but had 1 year stop in Oakland before finishing his career playing 52 games with Toronto in 2008. The answer was Shannon Stewart. Today's question to win tickets to see Jays A's at Rogers Center Sunday, August 11th is thus. This reliever enjoyed a solid 3-season run as the Blue Jays closer, but his best season was with the A's, where he earned 44 saves in 84 games. Now, text the answer to 590-590 for your shot to win. See rules at sportsnet.ca/590. Standard message and data rates.
He's one of the only people that has thrown 100 miles an hour as a Blue Jay, right?
I mean, he definitely did.
I'm pretty sure, right? Am I saying that right? Has there been other guys that
do you know the number of Blue Jays pitchers that have thrown 100?
I don't. Yeah, I mean, this is not a hard one.
Yeah, has Zach Pop touched 100?
No.
He's up there.
97, maybe. 96, 97.
Yeah.
Stay on top of that thing. It would sink more. Yeah, I got a funny story about this guy I would never tell on the air, but I told you.
Yeah.
This guy's loco.
Well, I mean, you kind of have to be a closer, don't you? Isn't that like a prerequisite?
Yeah. I mean, Rivera wasn't.
Yeah, that's true. He's the one guy. Was Trevor Hoffman that loco?
Yeah, I played. Yeah.
He was, okay.
Yeah.
Billy Wagner, by the way, Will Wagner, killing it in Buffalo.
Yeah. Next Gavin Biggio.
Well, Gavin Biggio just DFA'd by the Dodgers. Okay.
Yeah, I got yelled at from a colleague here about Gavin Biggio.
What? About what? In what way?
Just that, when you go to
Who
a
would
good
yell
team,
at you?
It's the catcher that talks. Well, there's 2 catchers that are on that TV side over there.
All right.
It's one of them 2 guys that yelled at me. So I'm a big fan of Cavan's, but Cavan's gotten a lot of opportunities, and this person seems to think he has not.
Okay. When we come back, we got Shi Davidi as we continued to break down Mark Shapiro's first media availability since spring training. Blue Jays continuing their series against the Baltimore Orioles. Shi Davidi next, as I'm Ben Ennis filling in for Jeff Blair. It's Blair and Barker, Sportsnet 590 The Fan, and Sportsnet.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, this is, in the 9 seasons I've been through, this is the biggest disconnect from expectations. It doesn't mean we haven't had, difficult endings to seasons. That doesn't mean we haven't had seasons where we knew we were going to have a challenge competing, but this has been by far the biggest disconnect from our expectations and the biggest disappointment. So we need to learn. We need to get better from it. And I think the trade deadline was the start of that, making sure we get better from challenges, adversity, and disappointment. But that has to happen in the way we put the team together for next year for sure.
Blair and Barker, Sportsnet 590 The Fan, Sportsnet. Ben Ennis filling in for Jeff Blair. That was Toronto Blue Jays president and CEO Mark Shapiro talking about the biggest separation between expectation and reality in his entire career. So no longer a blip when we're talking about this offense. It's a trend and obviously needs a big change this offseason. All right, let's bring in Shi Davidi, Sportsnet and Sportsnet.ca zone. How's it going, Shi?
I'm all right. How are you?
Doing very well. I mean, what was your big takeaway listening to Mark today?
I think there were a couple, right? The first one that stuck out to me was the conversation about the future of general manager Ross Atkins, and Mark Shapiro very carefully saying, look, and there's nothing equivocal. I don't comment on people's job status in season, but contextually, I'm a big believer in stability and think that's a competitive advantage. And if you're doing some following of the breadcrumbs there, you could certainly interpret that as him hinting strongly that at least his desire is for Ross Atkins to return as general manager. There's always a little leeway that any executive leaves for themselves in these types of discussions and conversations, but there's a little bit of leeway there. There's also a little bit of leeway in discussions about what the goal is going to be for 2025. And Mark Shapiro said the intent is to compete again and to try to be a contending club. And that is something that is consistent with how we've seen the Blue Jays approach the trade deadline and keeping the vast majority of their 1+ control players. But there was a little bit of leeway too in terms of him saying we've got to assess what we've got in house and then make a final deliberation on how we go after 25 from there. So those were the two things that stuck out to me, although there are lots of other areas that we can certainly discuss and are worth discussing because there was a lot of interesting things there.
Shi, it's very broad. Like he left the window open only the way Mark can do. Like he talks and you walk away going, yeah, I know. It's like the Vladdy conversation. I'm in the camp. I think if they were going to do it, they'd have done it already. But listening to him talk, and then I think about it, I still have no idea what they're thinking. Where do you think they start? Like, where's the starting point? Because it could be coaching staff, it could be player. I know he mentioned the bullpen, which is obvious. You need to probably start from the 9th inning and work your way backwards. Where do you think is the first place they'll start when the offseason starts?
Well, there's a few things, right? I think the easiest one is you've got to make decisions on in-house on your coaching staff. And just hearing him talk about how the offenses, they looked at last year as an aberration, but this year it's kind of clearly indicating it's a trend. There have been some things that have corrected, and the Blue Jays have adjusted a lot of their processes in terms of the way they prepare, the type of batting practice they take, some of their goals and the way that they're handling those things. There's certainly been a lot of adjustments and learning. So is there some sort of tweak or adjustment in that area? I think that's probably internally where you're starting. And then the baseball calendar dictates where you go from there, right? So you until the World Series ends, you're not really going to do anything from a player perspective. It's a good opportunity to start talking to Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and Bo Bichette to see where they're at from an extension perspective. And I think to a certain degree, you have to figure out what you're doing with those guys before the market opens. Because if you've got a window to extend Vlad, well then, okay, if you're extending Vlad, then you're locking in down a path, right? You're not going to, or Bo or whatever the case, you're locking yourself down a path because you're not extending those guys and then saying, okay, we're not going to really be all in, or we're not going to spend to this certain level. You've got to make sure that you're trying to leverage them while you have them under contract. So that's a path. And then if there's no opportunity or you don't see any sort of common ground on what an extension looks like, well, then that tells you something different. You can't go into, I would think at least, go into next season with both those guys as pending free agents. That's just too risky. Those assets are too important to the franchise. And so you've got to make a decision at that point. How are you handling it? Are you trading one, keeping one, and then rolling it out from there? Are you trading both? Or maybe you're willing to take that risk of going into next season with both those guys in their walk year. But I think just from an asset management perspective, that's a pretty dangerous route to take, especially when you don't have a locked-in contender. Like, you have a lot of work to do next year to make this team a legitimate threat in the American League.
Shi, how do you think the ownership handles the extension or not giving an extension to Mark?
That's a great question. I think to some degree, I mean, I'm going to be speculating here. I don't have a direct sense of where that sits right now. But, you know, if we're going to take a step back, we talked a little bit about Ross Atkins and where he's at. Like, if you think about it, if Mark Shapiro's contract is up at the end of 2025, which unless he's received some sort of extension quietly that hasn't been announced, that's what we know at this point. You know, can you make a change at general manager and put someone in place for a couple of years beyond where that contract ends? Because like, would somebody, like, I would think not, because you don't want to have yet another GM under contract. Ross Atkins' contract runs through 2026. You wouldn't want to have a second GM with multiple years of term beyond where your president is at. And I don't think any sort of GM would take that job with a one-year deal to just sort of be a caretaker. So I think that whole situation is pretty complicated. And I think where you end up locking in, you have to give Mark Shapiro the offseason, and then you see where things are at the beginning of next season. In a way, it reminds me a little bit of the situation that the Blue Jays had going into the 2015 season when, you know, Paul Beeston was going to leave the job at the end of the year. He was going to be replaced. And Alex Anthopoulos was going in the final year of his contract, and all bets were off. Everything was going to depend on what happened during the season. And then we know what ended up happening from there. So I see maybe a bit of a parallel there, but I don't know that for a fact. That's just my reading of the situation at this point.
Yeah, I correct me if I'm wrong, but it felt like Paul Beeston's was a little more separated from the baseball operations of the Blue Jays than Mark Shapiro is when it comes to actually making this roster and the changes that will be coming this offseason. I wonder, in your understanding of how things work at the tippy top of the decision structure here, how involved with baseball operations Mark Shapiro is, and is there a potential for him to become more involved in the baseball operations, whether that's, you know, actually just naming himself general manager, or just, okay, I'm the guy who just factually has more on the line when it comes to a contract sooner than everybody, and I'm the guy that's at the tippy top of the reporting structure, that it's up to me. I'm going to be the one making the roster decisions this offseason.
Well, way I would answer that, Ben, is that, you know, on a couple of occasions, maybe more than that even, during the discussion today with media, he just kept deferring to Ross Atkins on certain things. He said, "Oh, that's a question for Ross to answer for you at the end of the season. Or that's something that you need to talk to Ross about." And so if he wants to appoint himself as head of baseball, and that would have been a good opportunity for him to start answering those questions. And the fact that he did not leads me to believe that he intends to have a general manager beneath him. Now, could the grounds shift? Sure. And in terms of how involved is he, you know, he certainly plays a part. You know, I mean, I've heard different things from other clubs in terms of how active he might be or how much a part of it that he is. But we know that the Blue Jays have a very collaborative structure in which a lot of different people have input, and they try to remove emotion from their decision-making process as much as they can, and not to try to have, you know, one voice maybe dominate a conversation. Now, obviously, title allows certain voices to carry more weight than others, but I think that's how I would describe the situation where there is involvement, but is he leading negotiations with clubs? I don't believe that to be the case. Is he directing the direction or the actions of the Blue Jays? I'm sure that he has input into that, as the president and CEO should. So the balance lies within those boundaries somewhere, and how exactly that lands, it's difficult. This is again a collaborative structure. So where does the weight actually lie? I think there's a collective weight, and it's fluid based on decision to decision.
Shi, if they want to go out and get a middle of the order bat and a closer, you think they'll still have the money to do it?
That's an interesting question, because when I asked Mark from a payroll perspective, you're gonna have all these roles? Are you gonna have enough money to work with that? He said, I don't expect there to be a major pullback. First of all, he said payrolls don't get set in August, but I don't expect a major pullback in where the payroll is at. Now, it's subtle, but that's different than some language that he's used in previous years, where in previous years he said, I expect this to be in the same neighborhood. And so does that mean they're maybe at 225 instead of 230, 36, 238, wherever they're at right now? Is that something else? Is that just code for right now? We're not expecting a major change, but there's a slight change in the language there. And, Mark is very precise with his words, and he doesn't say things randomly. And that would have been a phrase I imagine that he'd had in his head for that potential answer for a question. And so that I thought was really interesting. And, and to go back to your original question, I still think that leaves them with quite a bit of money to work with, right? They've got some $50 million coming off the books, at least from their starting payroll of where they're at. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is going to be their one major raise going into next year. And he's probably going to be about, I would guess right now, $5 to $8 million more expensive next year than he was this year, based on where his arbitration number would go, based on the trajectory of his current numbers. But that gives them plenty of money to work with, and they should be able to add some impact to that. To me, the more interesting question is, what are they going to do from a term perspective? I don't know that necessarily the dollars are going to be the issue, but are they going to be willing to do a 5, 6, 7-year deal to get somebody of serious impact? Again, with the contractual status of the front office, limited to 25 and 26.
Is it a heavy lift? I mean, obviously from a wins perspective, it feels like a heavy lift. And you look at the top teams at the tippy top of the American League East. Although after yesterday's game, it doesn't look so daunting. But we'll see. We'll see them play today against the Orioles. How much of a heavy lift is it to get the Blue Jays? It's hard to imagine them getting to a place where you look at them as like right there with the Orioles and Yankees. But again, we live in the 3 wildcard system. Is it a heavy lift to get to a playoff team for this Blue Jays team?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing the 3 wildcard team world does tell you is that you don't have to be an unbelievable squad to be there. You just have to be pretty good. And there is a pathway to pretty good, but there is a heavy lift. I think, we've talked about this ever since they traded Teoscar Hernandez, but they never backfilled for that big bat there. And that's a huge hole. They need an impact bat to hit behind Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Because if not, teams are just going to give him the judge treatment, and he's going to have to walk 130 or 140 times. So that's going to be a clear need. And, they acquired some interesting players, but I don't know if they acquired a number 4 hitter to protect Vlad just yet. So that's going to be one obvious need. And then if you look at their bullpen right now, in terms of who you can count on into next season, you're looking at Chad Green, you're looking at Genesis Cabrera, you're looking probably at Brandon Little, who's done a nice job and has the stuff that you can think, okay, he can really grow into this role. And then Eric Swanson right now, if he continues on the little bit of a correction that he's had, you're like, okay, he's probably part of it. And then there's 4 guys from there to figure out. In Jordan Romano right now, I think the Blue Jays have to figure out where he is from a health perspective. He's going to be here tomorrow, I believe, and the Blue Jays are going to get a first-hand look at sort of where is his progression. But he's going into his final year of arbitration, and he's going to be a big figure next year. It's going to be at least $8 million for him if the Blue Jays want to bring him back on that. I don't think that would be the case. So you're looking at having to non-tender and re-sign him in some sort of way, maybe making it a multi-year deal or whatever the case is, something creative there. So you've got to figure out what you're doing from there. So that's at least 3 or 4 bullpen arms that you're looking for. So that's a pretty heavy lift. And then you have to decide, okay, are you going to go into next year with Bloss and Yariel Rodriguez in your rotation as 4 and 5, or is Vladimir Francis one of those guys, or do you need at least one established starter to add in the mix, and then you let the other guys figure it out? So that's a pretty heavy lift. That's a lot to accomplish in a single offseason, especially when, your payroll, they say $50 million to work with. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me right now. Like that's a pretty good number to work with, but that goes fast when you're trying to fill that many spots.
Shi, who can fix Bo, and how do they fix Bo?
I think ultimately Bo's got to fix Bo. Probably will be doing a lot of that with Dante. Probably right now while he's been recovering with his calf, has been trying to figure out ways to get himself back. And, in talking to him before he re-injured his calf, he had done a lot of work during the All-Star break. He had taken something like 1,000 swings over the All-Star break, trying to get himself into a spot where he felt comfortable. And it's 2 at-bats. You don't want to read too much into it, but he had 2 very Bo-like at-bats against the Tigers before he re-injured himself. And so maybe he was starting to find something just when he was coming back. But, ultimately Bo always finds his way out of these things. And so I would trust in him to figure this out. I think for a lot of reasons, he had a lot of things on his shoulders this season that may have factored into some of the challenges that he faced. At a certain point, the calf became something he was playing through, and no doubt had at least some sort of minor role in what he was going through at the plate. But, if they don't get him right, then 2025 is going to be even more problematic than we think, right? Because Vlad's got to be very good and Bo's got to be very good for this to even be a conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll see if we see him before the end of the season. We'll also see how many of the young players that have yet to reach the major leagues for the Blue Jays we see at the end of this season. Bison's with a doubleheader today. They already completed a game. Jonathan Clase hit his first Bison's home run. Will Wagner's off to a great start. Jake Bloss is going to start this weekend. When will we see any, if not all of those guys before the end of the season?
Yeah, so Bloss to me is the one that's the most interesting, right? Because the Blue Jays do have a spot to play with right now. And Bowden Francis is starting tonight. And, you kind of line up, this might be the spot where he ends up going. But at a certain point, maybe they want to rest. They want to rest Yariel Rodriguez at a certain point. I haven't asked anyone about this, but I wondered, would they consider going into a 6-man rotation a little bit at a certain point? Just to, you want to protect Barrios, Gausman, and Bassett into next year, because they're going to be, in a lot of ways, a key part of the foundation of a competitive team. So do you want to try to lighten the load on them a little bit? Do you go with the 6-star? You want to also maybe ease the load on Bloss a little bit, who's had a remarkable season through 4 levels to get to the big leagues. So I think that for him, we'll probably see him down the road a little bit, maybe later this month, if not September at some point. Wagner, I feel like there's been just hints that he's going to be up here soon, and the Jays kind of feel like he's got a chance. But and the same with Clase. But I also do think that the Jays are, for right now, want to see where's Addison Barger at. And Ernie Clement's getting some run, and he keeps hitting, so you want to give him some opportunity. It's really interesting how they're going to divide and give guys a chance. Because if somebody really grabs the bulls by the horn, does that take away an opportunity from somebody else? And so I think that's where the balance is right now. I'd expect to see Wagner and Clase earlier than Bloss, but again, that could change depending on how things are playing out on the field here right now.
There's also a 40-year-old who pinch hit today. He struck out, but he hit a home run for the Bisons. He's finally playing in AAA. I'm looking at the Blue Jays' upcoming schedule. They got an interesting series against the Reds on August 19th. Do we see Joey Votto as a Blue Jay this season?
Man.
I mean, if we're promoting for narrative, then yes, right?
Yeah.
But so the other really interesting tidbit to me from today was Mark Shapiro saying right now they're just under the $237 million competitive balance tax threshold, right? And it's not critical for the Blue Jays to duck under it because they're not losing spots in the draft where they're at. But if you want to sign a qualified free agent, it would be more advantageous for them to be beneath the CBT this year than over it. And if you recall Joey Votto, well, you're going to get a prorated portion of $2 million for him being, or got to pay him a prorated portion of $2 million for being in the big league. So he's more expensive to call up than any other 0 to 3 service time player that you might recall at this point. So that's an interesting little wrinkle into this. I don't think the Blue Jays would ultimately hold Joey Votto back because of that. But I wonder if they are looking at if he's going to end up here. One, who are we taking away at bats from to give him some at bats? And two, how do we navigate the CBT impact to ensure that he's not pushing us across the line?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's interesting. He is playing in AAA though.
How about that?
Shy, appreciate the time. Thanks,
You're the
buddy.
best, buddy. That's tremendous.
Yeah. All right, take care, guys.
See you later.
See ya, Shi Davidi. So Joey Votto has made $263,155 in his major league career.
200 and how many million?
60. Okay, he's 40 years old.
Yeah,
had a down year, very much so in the major leagues last year.
He's had some down years.
Yeah.
Years.
He's also bounced back from some down years too, even late in his career. But yeah, he's 40 years old. Okay, had a rough start.
You're a first ballot Hall of Famer for Joey Votto guy.
I didn't say first ballot. I think he's going to the Hall of Fame. So
yeah,
you better get used to that.
Helton got in. He'll be in.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, has the MVP. He's on base leader of his era. He played in Cincinnati.
Oh boy, that's enough right there.
I mean, I like guys who don't make outs. And Joey Votto throughout the course of his career,
who you pay to produce runs.
Yes, he did that too.
Plays
though.
a corner.
He did
plays
that too.
in a Coors Field 2.0 needs to hit them the homers.
There's
starts
no question.
With a 5.
Yeah, no, he never did that in the 30s with lots of walks.
500. I'm talking.
Oh well, yeah, he's
ways
off of that.
Look, good for him. I'm just very confused on why he's
Me
doing
too.
this.
That's what I was going to say. $260 million over his career.
It's obviously nothing
What's
about
happening?
money. It has nothing to do with that, obviously. Now, if you've ever met Joey, Joey is
I've talked to him. I wouldn't say I've met him.
He's an original thinker. Like he is, he has his own thoughts on what he needs to do and when he needs to do them and how he's going to go about trying to get it done. I have no clue. I've known Joey. I played with Joey.
Mm-hmm.
I played against Joey. Joey's a really, really good player who's made a ton of money. I have no clue what he's doing.
I mean, you can't deny.
He's earned the right to go away and spend that money till they call him and say you just made the Hall of Fame.
You can spend the
and then
majority.
you can go to the MLB Network and be on do whatever they do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's got the majority of his life to be not a baseball player, right? And that's going to happen. He'll spend his money.
It's a lot of effort to go through this to get called up for
the buses,
15 at bats or whatever he's going to get. I mean, it's not. Again, they got to figure out what they got going into next year, and it don't include Joey.
No. Well, that's
so
it.
I just don't that's the part of it I just don't understand. Will it be nice to say hi to Joey, give him a hug? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Wish him the best of luck and say I can't wait to watch you get in your plaque on TV. But you guys get it? Because I don't. I don't understand it. Maybe it's just wearing his country's uniform, sort of walking out the way he wants to walk out. Most players don't get the chance to do that. Maybe that's what he wants to do. So if that's it. But if I'm running the organization and it hinders me from trying to do something that I want to do in the offseason or going forward that I can get a better path, I mean, it is obvious what they need. There's no question anymore. There's no CAC can talk you into that. None whatsoever. They'll try, but there's no way. None whatsoever. If that hinders that in whatsoever, the way Shi is talking, he's not coming up.
No, I agree. I mean, if he takes one at bat away from somebody who you're trying to evaluate for next season, if he puts you 1 cent over the competitive balance tax, you're not doing it.
Nope.
I mean, that being said, and Mark Shapiro, when asked about placating the fans, he said it's about score more runs, about winning more baseball games.
Yeah.
That's next season. That's not going to happen this season. I would say that you could placate some fans with a Joey Votto moment. There are fans out there, Kevin. Would you deny that some fans would like to see Joey Votto finish his career as a Blue Jay?
Yeah, when's he playing? Is John Snyder going to send out the lineup 2 days in advance to say, make sure you come today because Joey's going to play? I mean, you just want to see him walking around in his uniform? You have no idea if he'd ever play or not. That's the thing, right? So I'm sure they'll handle it in a respectful way. He wouldn't do anything to hinder the organization. He is a great dude. He's not going to do any of that. again, they will go about it in the correct way. Just coming from the player's point of view, and he has earned the right, all the money's, really? Like, who would go to Buffalo and play on purpose?
I mean,
no
you did
offense
it.
no offense to Buffalo. No, I didn't go on purpose.
No,
I went because I had to go.
That's right. Yeah.
No offense to Buffalo, but
No. It's Queen City. I mean, you go there for chicken wings.
yeah, food's great, but baseball,
Yeah.
not if you made $260 million large.
Yeah, I might fly over Buffalo.
Yeah, wave at it when you're flying over it.
Anyways,
But good for Joey, whatever.
yeah, that's the last word on the subject.
Yep.
Whatever.
Yep.
All right. When we come back, we'll
See,
talk.
we were nice about that. That's nice.
Yeah.
We're respectful, which is what we should be, and
Yeah.
we just have no clue. I have no idea why I'd ever do that.
Yeah.
I would never do that. Not once I'd go away, you'd never hear from me again till they're introducing my name.
Agreed. Same wavelength. Anyway.
And I'll hang my plaque in that room.
Go play chess. But I guess he's
There
got,
it is.
60 years of chess playing ahead of him.
Yes.
Anyways, no matter what. All right, when we come back, we'll talk to Chris Gimenez, former Major League catcher, MLB Network radio analyst, as Blair and Barker continues. Ben Ennis in for Jeff Blair, Sportsnet 590 The Fan, and Sportsnet. Blair and Barker. Ben
I feel
Ennis in
today.
for Jeff Blair.
Right there.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, rhythm.
That's how the Blue Jays are feeling after yesterday's
Ooh,
5-2 win over
takes
the
one
Orioles.
win, huh?
Yeah. I don't
But
know.
Chris looked good.
Chris looked amazing. So Chris, when did he give up his first hit? The fifth inning or something?
Sixth. That was a home run to Holiday.
Yeah.
I thought that was a good pitch. I know
He said
Buck
it
was saying he missed location, and
Well-
I think he wanted it up a little bit more.
Chris
but it was
was
still
more-
in the black.
Yeah, Chris was more upset that he threw it so quickly after he threw a two-seamer, the cutter inside to Jackson.
It's all about sequencing and unpredictability, and I thought it was a good pitch. I just think the kid beat him to the spot. Every once in a while, you got to tip your hat, man. I mean, throwing up pitches.
Yeah.
Sooner or later, the dude's going to get you. I mean, they're big leaguers.
Jackson Holiday now in his second stint as a major leaguer, hitting an even 400 with 3 homers, 1378 OPS. So, it looks legit. But, yeah, Chris was awesome. Chris Bassett was awesome yesterday. He's 35 years old. He's going to be 36 the beginning of next season. And, boy, I know he's had an uneven season, but now with that start yesterday, the ERA back under 4, he's got, 10 more starts before the end of this season?
8 maybe. I think what Shi said about the 6-man rotation calling up, we have talked to John, I think not last week, but the week after that, about how you handled the big 3 in the rotation. They are getting up there in age, and he basically said we're going to give them the ball every 5 days. But, I think because of what it means to get off to a really, really good start next year, and it starts with those 3 dudes, I think it'd be okay for them to make 6 starts instead of 8 starts, right?
Yeah.
I mean, look, again, they get paid to start, and, those 3 dudes are legit, and they're trying to set an example for some younger guys, right? This is the way we do it. We want to make our first start and our last start, yada, 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 et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But every once in a while, you got to be the grown-up in the room, don't you? And go, hey, dude, I see what I see.
Yep.
And it might be beneficial for us to do this. It probably wasn't going to happen, but just because of the options that they don't have, that may be more what the issue is than whether they would like to do it or not. So,
Well, and Chris Bassett had his 200-inning season last year. So
a lot, right, at that age. And
Yeah. No,
it's
he
like
hit the
asking
milestone.
Justin Turner to have back-to-back career years in his late 30s.
Yeah.
I mean,
Interesting way to build a baseball team. All right.
so wing and a miss.
All right.
I mean, sorry. That was rude.
Hey, he's hitting cleanup for the Mariners now.
Yeah.
All right. Let's talk to Chris Gimenez, former Major League catcher, MLB Network radio host. How's it going, Chris?
I'm doing great, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for doing this. You know what? We were talking about Chris Bassett, so why don't we continue? Chris Bassett, he's 36. He's going to be 36 next season. I don't want to age him, but he's a guy. I mean, he doesn't throw 89, right? Like he can throw mid 90s. He can rush it up there every once in a while, but he's a pitcher's pitcher, right?
Yeah.
I mean, could he be the next Jamie Moyer?
No doubt.
Jamie Moyer had Tommy
great
John
question.
in his. I think he's 47 when Jamie Moyer had Tommy John. He came back and did pitch when he's 49. Could you see Chris Bassett being the modern day Jamie Moyer?
Oh,
I don't know about 49, but 39, let's start there. No, I'm totally kidding with you guys. But I think it's a fair point to ask, right? That, he's a guy that he doesn't light up the radar gun. 92, 93, there's nothing to shy away from in regards to that. But what makes Chris so good is you can't sit one pitch in one location. He has 6 or 7 different pitches that he can throw to any portion of the plate, and he's so cerebral in how he goes about attacking certain hitters. You know, it's tough when all your stuff is not on, but when he's on, he's still easily one of the best pitchers in the game.
Chris, we talk about Alejandro Kirk a lot just because of how much he has to pitch now. No Danny Jansen. You know, you're trying to find out what you got. So in the offseason, you can sort of check that off the list of now you have your everyday catcher. You know, you could bring up a minor leaguer. You could do this. You're the perfect guy to ask this. What's it take in 2024 to be a good catcher? In your mind, the definition of a good catcher is what?
I think that's a great question because it's completely different now than it was, say, even 10 years ago, right? 10 years ago, I think a little bit more of the physical attributes came into play. Not that they don't now, but you have to be so much more willing to change on the fly, I feel like now. With all of the information that a lot of these organizations put in front of you, you have to be able to decipher what works for you in particular and what works for your particular pitcher that day. That takes a little bit more of a thinking man, right? And I think in regards to having to decipher a lot of this information, it takes a little bit of time to really kind of go through and understand your process. It can be a very daunting task when organizations hand you all this information. And of course, your first natural reaction, or at least mine was to try and memorize everything, you know, and then as you're going through things in your head, you have a tendency to maybe overcomplicate stuff. And then, you know, sometimes it can hurt you on the field. But if you can create a process, which I think he's definitely becoming a little more probably okay with, is really creating his own process. He's starting to do a lot of good things back there because now you see the glove work. He's done a great job with that. I think continuing to improve in his blocking and his throwing will always help. But I think you're seeing a guy that is making the strides and taking those steps to be that everyday catcher. It's just a difficult thing from a physical standpoint as well, that you have to keep your body in primo condition, which I'm not saying he's not, but it definitely, you know, you have to change the way you do things during the season if you're going to do that every day.
Chris, tell me what your again. I hate to ask definitions here, but you would know this better than I would. In 2024, the definition of an everyday catcher, is that 4 days a week? Or are you looking at a guy that, say, can catch in that 100-game range at the end of the season? Which one, or both?
I think now everyday catcher is probably between 100 and 120 games, truthfully. You know, I think those days are gone where you're going to see a guy catch 140, 150-plus games. You know, there still may be an Ironman out there that wants to do it, but because a lot of our best catchers in the game are so offensive-oriented now as well, I think teams are really looking for ways to keep these guys in the lineup as much as possible and take it easy on their bodies. So you may see guys bats in the lineup, but behind the plate, I just don't know if we're at that point anymore. I'd say 100, 115 games is probably all you're going to get out of a starting catcher these days.
Yeah, it's 115 games. The only reason I ask that is because of Alejandro Kirk's body type, right? I know you know who that is. He just 115 seems like a lot. It just seems like that would be a heck of a load for a guy of his stature to try and work through it and get the best out of him, not only on the defensive side when it comes to what you mentioned, the throwing guys out, and also doing something offensively, which is, you know, the bat-to-ball skills is one of the things I think he brings, and the balance there. It's just another checklist of what the Blue Jays have to figure out in the offseason, which is what they're trying to do here in the next 50 games, which is not the easiest thing to do. And you gave a great answer. I'm intrigued to know if he can do it or not. We've seen him not be able to do it, but now we're seeing him try and force him into seeing if he can do it again. What's changed? I think that's the big question is, why now? Why can he do it now all of a sudden? So
well, I feel like it's changed out of necessity, right?
Yeah.
The fact that, you know, maybe the season hasn't turned out to be the way that a lot of us had envisioned, because I was on that train too. I predicted when we did our predictions at the beginning of the year, Toronto was going to be in one of the wild card games, and I actually had them going to the American League Championship Series this year. So it's okay to make mistakes every now and again. Not saying that, hey, the season's not over. We're not saying anything yet, but if we're talking about this from Kirky's standpoint, I think necessity, right? I mean, you've gotten to the point where now you're through the trade deadline. They had to make some decisions on some guys. They ended up trading, you know, Jansen, and he's now been thrust into this everyday role where at the beginning of the year he had to catch a little bit more because Danny got hurt. Yeah. And, you know, it's been out of necessity both times. But I think if you're Alejandro Kirk, the opportunity is right there in front of you. You know, this is your opportunity to not only show you can do it on the field, but I think off the field as well, and showing how I'm going to take care of my body. He's a bigger dude by nature, right? So it's not, we shouldn't just expect him to all of a sudden come into spring training next year and he's a cool 180 pounds. Like, that's not his body type. And that's not to say that he can't catch on a daily basis with his type of body that he currently has. He just is going to have to learn how to manage his work in between his starts. Obviously, the dietary issues, not that it's an issue, but he will have to, you know, figure out a way that works for him. And I think that's the thing, is there's no cookie cutter type. You know, you have to figure this out for yourself and understand what makes you feel good and allows you to play on a daily basis.
Yeah, God, it's such a physically demanding position. There's reasons why, you know, Hall of Famers like Buster Posey say, thanks, but no thanks, had enough. Why Joe Mauer eventually move off of it and become first baseman. It is got to be so taxing, especially on your knees. It must be taxing to be a Chicago White Sox right now, Chris. I mean, at least they're on.
I think it is.
Yeah, it's a 1-game winning streak today, but still very much on pace to be in the discussion for the most losingest team in Major League history. Chris, you played on some bad teams, you played on some good teams, none nearly as bad as this White Sox team. What must it be like to be on that team, coming to the ballpark every day?
Honestly, I couldn't even imagine what it would be like. I mean, talk about a morgue. I think it's probably a morgue times 10 or 15, because you got to think there's a lot of young guys and there's still a lot of older guys that, you know, if we want to have a conversation about who should have potentially moved at the trade deadline, I think there's a couple of guys on that roster that you could talk about at the top of that list. But again, this is an opportunity for a lot of those younger guys to really set the stage for your career. And you have to think about it in that clubhouse as such. Some of these veteran guys, I'm not saying because obviously I'm not in that clubhouse, but it would be easy to see why they potentially would pack it in for the season, right? I mean, it's been a rough year to say the least. You know, injuries have played a little bit into that, but also just poor play has played into that as well. And if you're a young player on this team, I saw a picture yesterday on Twitter of one of the young players that, you know, Miguel Vargas, that they just acquired from the Dodgers. And your heart kind of goes out to this young man because he hasn't been there that long yet to be able to really understand, you know, the depth of what this organization has gone through this year. But you could see it on his face that I just got traded from the team that was in first place to a team that may set the record for the worst record ever.
Wow.
You know, like you could see that heaviness in his face. But to hit their credit, they won last night. They were winning currently today, as when I got on the phone with you guys.
Yeah, that didn't last very long.
Okay, that didn't last very long. That could be a very short-lived winning streak there. But I would imagine if you're a young player on the team, you have to try to find any positive you possibly can and make the best impression on that organization going forward.
Chris, I just don't know how you blow up an entire organization. Like, you can blow up certain parts of the organization. It just seems to me like people that we've talked to, people that sounds like you've talked to, they need to blow the entire thing up and start completely over. I just don't know how you do that at the big league level. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Honestly, I think it's a fantastic point. And if you ask me, it's probably the reason I'm not a general manager somewhere right now, but I think you have to try to acquire as much talent as you possibly can. When you're putting together your plan going forward, I think you take every tradable asset you have right now in this offseason and you seriously look into the fact that if we can't sign this guy to a longer-term deal that we feel like maybe 5-6 type years to where, okay, at the end of this, we're going to really be getting into contention that this guy can really help us. I think you really need to look at possibly trading them for the best possible package. Not the most talent, the highest quality talent. I think that's going to be key because to me, that rebuild starts with getting quality young players that you can kind of let grow up together. Mm-hmm. I mean, I use the Baltimore Orioles as a prime example. They did a fantastic job. It was really, really lean for a few years there, but they did a great job on drafting and developing some of these players and getting them to the big league level and being ready to play when they're there.
Yeah,
and I think that's, if you're the White Sox, you got to look to that.
Yeah, you can't teach talent, right? I mean, that's 100% right. That's well said. Hey, I got this last one before I let you go. We had Chris Rose on, and I asked him, why shouldn't I think watching the Guardians play, they're the best team in the American League? And for whatever reason, Chris instinct that. He's like, no, I don't feel that way. And then I said, boy, it'd be nice to see the Guardians in a Padres World Series. And he said, well, we'd basically be the only two watching. How do you feel? Are you in my camp with the Guardians? Or are you sort of, and Chris, you still believe in the Orioles and I guess the Yankees, and I guess you could throw the Astros and the Mariners in there. Who you got in the American League?
Well, first of all, I'm going to text Chris Rose after this because I can't believe he did not stick up for his Guardians like he normally does.
Yeah.
But honestly, I'm in your camp. I think this team has the potential to do that. And they've been a team that has been discredited this entire year. I get it. They don't have as big of names on their team as, say the Orioles do, say the Yankees do. But they've played every bit as good, and if not better, than those two teams for the entirety of the year. And they've done it with, in theory, lesser talent, right? So I don't see there's a reason why we shouldn't be talking about these, or, at least the Padres for sure, because they have the talent and they're starting to play good. But the Guardians in particular, I don't see a reason why we can't talk about them in that same kind of ilk because, listen, people have been counting them out the entirety of the season, and they continue to just prove people wrong. So until they stop proving people wrong, I think it's crazy to count them out.
Yep.
We'll see. Chris, appreciate the time. Thanks.
Thanks, buddy.
You got it, guys. Anytime.
See ya.
Chris Gimenez, former Major League catcher, MLB Network radio host. Yeah, you need to hit home runs in the postseason.
Yeah,
so,
maybe.
I mean, they got a couple of mashers in the middle of that lineup.
And how about if you keep the other team from hitting homers?
Yeah, that helps too. You got to do both. You got to strike them out, and you got to hit.
You know what I think it is? I think because we've seen them try and go on the road against the Yankees and some of the better teams. Like if you had to go to Baltimore, do they just have enough? Right, the pitching and defense travel on the road. Would their superstars be enough to face and sort of muster up against what the other team has to offer on the road? I think that's the whole point, right? It's the hardest thing to do. Is to go into Yankee Stadium if you're the little engine that could and try and beat the big bad Yankees. I don't know. It's a good story. Yeah. They got a lot of good talent. We've seen them play up close and personal. They turn it into a 6-inning game with the bullpen that they have, the closer that they got, the third baseman who can do special things, change the game defensively, running the bases, baseball IQ guy.
No, it's a fun team to watch.
It is. Like they hustle all over the place. I mean, the leadoff hitter's impossible to strike out.
Yep.
It's just they got some things. I mean, they got lefties. They got a switch hitter. Like, if not now, when would you root for them? So I'm going to root for them.
Yeah. No, at a certain point, they're going to have to trade all those guys away.
And the Yankees whine too much.
Yankees up 5-0, by the way, in the first of their two games against the Angels today, doubleheader after they were rained.
Angels stink.
Aaron Judge 2 for 2, but no home runs yet for Aaron Judge.
Best hitter on planet.
He's doing his best Barry Bonds impression right now. We have a Blue Jays lineup today against the lefty and Trevor Rogers. George Springer leading off, playing right field. Ernie Clement hitting second. He is playing second base. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. third base, trying to extend that hitting streak to 19 games. Alejandro Kirk, your DH today. Mm-hmm. Spencer Horwitz in the lineup against the lefty, playing first base. Davis Schneider back in there. In left field, Dalton Varsho, center field, Leo Jimenez, shortstop. Brian Servin is your catcher. Alejandro Kirk, everyday catcher. And, I mean, he's starting to heat up. Had the big blast yesterday. Had another hit and actually hit the ball hard a third time in that baseball game.
You hit a homer. It's back-to-back days of catching. That's for Kirky.
Yeah, they're going to need him, though, right? He's doing a lot of catching.
Yeah, I think it's the offensive side against the lefty. It's the lefties. They don't want to play against the lefty. I like that they're playing Horowitz against the lefty. I mean, you need to find out. Obviously, I think the bat-to-ball skills is using the entire field, being able to lay off a strike-to-ball, breaking ball from a lefty is a big deal for Horowitz. He just seems like a part of the future. Yeah. Davis Schneider, look, you want to make my team next year? If I was running this thing, you need to annihilate lefties. I'm talking.
His splits have been reversed. He's hit righties better than lefties.
Good against lefties. He ain't been real good against righties either.
It's been a couple of months.
It's a big enough sample size that he has some issues. It's just he tinkers too much. Yeah. This gets back to that. Who's the voice, man? It's like, who you listening to? Well, I know he's listening to, but man, it's just, do you have that? That again, I think gets back to you got to be quicker about is he talented enough to help you going forward? Is he a part of your team next year? Mm-hmm. Do they know that already?
Well, how much can you take away from these final couple of months of games here?
Pretty big sample size of him having some trouble with the elevator fastball.
I mean, he's different, right? He's different. We're getting a better idea of who Davis Schneider is.
Somebody needs to destroy lefties.
Yeah.
And I can trade that. If I need to trade that, good teams look for guys who annihilate, who are right-handed, who can get after left-handed pitching.
Yep.
If he can start doing that, I just think consistently he tinkers so much that it's just getting in an athletic position a lot of the times. And he's a launch angle guy. He's got the bend upper half, the waist bends, barrel follows, looks like a windmill. Khaki sees that, elevate the hitter, elevate the hitter, elevate the hitter. Like, it's not hard. You know it's coming. I know it's coming. You can't do nothing about it. For me, this is sort of a tryout for him.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, if not, like, you got to think about trading him, giving him up other opportunities. Like, you're going to need to use what you got at the big league level to maybe trade for a good catcher, younger catcher going forward, maybe an extra arm, the number 4 guy, maybe an 8th inning guy. You could use that, right?
Yeah.
Loperfido, Schneider, Ernie Clement for me next year's on my team.
Yeah.
He's the 4th infielder.
Yeah, he's the 26th man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think you've figured that out with Ernie Clement. I think you figured out that Spencer Horwitz is part of the solution.
Left-handed, hit the bottom of the order, can play second.
I do wonder about the other guys, if there's enough runway here for in considering how much better this offense needs to be. You need a third baseman, you need a left fielder. I mean, I almost wonder if there's anything Addison Barger can do in these final 2 months, even if he looks like the second coming of Barry Bonds.
They got quite a few dudes who have trouble hitting the heater.
Yeah. I mean, he had a big hit against the lefty yesterday.
How do I take you serious if you have trouble hitting the heater?
Yeah.
You're awfully young.
Yeah.
That's the thing, right, is I can teach you how to lay off a breaking ball that starts as a strike and ends up as a ball. I can teach you how to do that. I really can't teach you how to get athletic and have enough bat speed to beat the guy to the spot. You can either do it or you can't. So, for me, it starts there. Simplify this thing enough. You don't have to hook up a machine to figure out if a guy can play at the big league level. Use your eyes, see if he can hit a heater.
Yeah.
You have the best. I said this. Jeff asked me this, I don't know, a couple months ago. If you're the hitting coach, what would you do? I'd turn this lineup into the best fastball hitting team on earth.
It's a good call.
Earth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
like 2015.
Yeah.
Right? What did they do? They destroyed.
You get in a fastball count, you get a fastball.
Man.
It's
and
going
they
over the fence.
they made lefties look silly.
Yeah.
I would think that's a pretty simple place to start, right?
I'd be all for that. Anything that made you think about 2015 with this
so
Blue
if you
Jays
go out
team.
and buy a hitter, see if he can hit a hitter.
Yeah, or hit one over
Average
the fence.
against, slugging against. How many homers did he hit?
Yeah.
That means he's probably pulling velocity in the air. That gave you a pretty good idea that he knows what he's doing to mechanically get in an athletic position consistently. Don't overthink that thing. And I can teach him how to have the little pause to recognize breaking ball. It's like Ernie Clement, I think, hit the breaking ball, might have been last night.
Yeah, he's really adjusting. No, he hit one yesterday.
Yeah, where
out of the zone, bottom half.
It's very athletic, geared up for velocity. That gives you that little split second to recognize it.
Yeah.
Because of the level swing, I can adjust to different quadrants. Gives me a chance to put the ball in play hard up the middle the other way. Like, it is genius. It is almost too simple.
Yeah, with the way you describe it.
Well, why can't they do that? Like, if baseball should be real simple.
Yeah, it can't be that simple. Bowden France is starting
2 years in a row,
the Blue Jays, coming off his best start as a major leaguer, giving up 3 earned runs over 5 2/3 innings. Did come in relief in that Yankee series, gave up the game-winning run in extra innings, but he gets the start as he tries to assert himself as a piece of the rotation, whether it's in the major leagues or a AAA, like an option next season.
Good
for the Blue
curveball,
Jays.
he'll be all right.
Yeah, added the splitter. See what he does against a very good Baltimore Orioles team, which again is battling for top spot in the American League East. Blue Jays, Orioles, game 2 of 3 tonight. We'll be back with another edition of Blair and Barker. Ben Ennis filling in for Jeff Blair tomorrow. Sportsnet 590, The Fan, and Sportsnet.